Do you hear those chains rattling off in the distance? It's not jolly old St. Nicholas, but someone a bit similar in nature. However, he doesn't reward good boys and girls. He punishes the naughty, and we're going to learn all about him tonight.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real, based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
Many holiday traditions come from a place of darkness. In fact, the holiday season itself is a time of darkness. The winters are long and cold, and the days are short. The nights are long and dark. And who knows what could be lurking out there, waiting for you. So we ward off those feelings of unease with celebrations, with bright lights, with tasty food. But one dark and dastardly Christmas tradition has survived the test of time better than all else. He's known as Krampus. He's the Christmas demon, and we'll learn all about him after these quick words from our sponsors. Christmas is the season of greetings, blessings, and that all good things come to those who wait. If you're nice to others and do good all year round, then Santa brings gifts and joy. But if you've been a bad kid, if you were naughty all year, get ready for season's beatings by the anti-Santa, Krampus. A half-man, half-goat, considered the son of the Norse god of the underworld, legend has it Krampus punishes naughty people and even drags them to hell. If you haven't heard or experienced the wrath of Krampus, consider yourself lucky, however you might ask. Who is Krampus? This man and animal hybrid comes around every year to chase naughty children and punish them. European versions of St. Nicholas have long had scary counterparts, like Belsnickel and Knecht Ruprecht, who dole out punishment. Krampus is one such character who comes from folklore in Austria's Alpine region, where he's been frightening children and amusing adults for hundreds of years. The history of the Krampus figure has been theorized as stretching back to pre-Christian Alpine traditions, with celebrations involving Krampus dating back to the 6th or 7th century CE, though there are no written sources before the end of the 16th century. The terror of Krampus was put on hold during the aftermath of the 1932 election in Austria. The Krampus tradition was prohibited by the Dollfuss regime under the clerical fascist Fatherlands Front, or Vaterlandisch Front, and the Christian Social Party. In the 1950s, the government distributed pamphlets titled, "Krampus is an evil man." Towards the end of the century, a popular resurgence of Krampus celebrations occurred, and continues today. The Krampus tradition is being revived in Bavaria as well, along with a local artistic tradition of hand-carved wooden masks. In 2019, there were reports of drunken or disorderly conduct by masked Krampuses in some Austrian towns. Although Krampus appears in many variations, most share some common physical characteristics. He is hairy, usually brown or black, and has the cloven hooves and horns of a goat. His long, pointed tongue lolls out, and he has fangs. Krampus carries chains thought to symbolize the binding of the devil by the Christian church. He thrashes the chains for dramatic effect. The chains are sometimes accompanied with bells of various sizes. Of more pagan origins is the root, a bundle of birch branches that Krampus carries and with which he occasionally swats children. The root may have had significance in pre-Christian pagan initiation rites. The birch branches are replaced with a whip in some representations. Sometimes Krampus appears with a sack or a basket strapped to his back. This is to cart off evil children for drowning, eating, or transporting to hell. Some of the older versions make mention of naughty children being put in a bag and simply taken away. Though descriptions of Krampus's appearance vary from region to region, some things remain consistent. He is said to have pointed, devilish horns and a long, snake-like tongue. His body is covered in coarse fur, and he looks like a goat crossed with a demon. His body and arms are strung with chains and bells, and he carries a large sack or basket on his back to cart off those children. Krampus comes to town the night before the feast of St. Nicholas and visits all the houses to dish out his punishments. If you're lucky, you might just get swatted with a birch branch. If you're not, you'll wind up in his sack. After that, your fate is anyone's guess. Sometimes Krampus is accompanied by St. Nicholas, who isn't known to bother himself with naughty children in Central Europe. Instead, he focuses on handing out presents to well-behaved children and then leaves the rest up to his sinister counterpart. No one quite knows how Krampus became so popular around the holidays in Austria, Bavaria, the Czech Republic, and Slovenia, but some believe that Krampus originally hails from the Alpine region's pagan past. His name comes from the German word Krampen, which means claws. It's a compelling theory, especially since Krampus's appearance coincides with a number of pagan winter rites, most notably one that sends people parading through the streets to disperse the ghosts of winter. Over the years, as Christianity gained popularity in the region, aspects of Krampus's appearance began to shift to fall more in line with Christian beliefs. It isn't hard to see how Krampus, already associated with the winter festivities, might then have incorporated into Christian traditions and the legend of St. Nicholas around Christmas time. Today, Krampus has his own celebration on the day before the feast of St. Nicholas in the Alpine region. Every evening on December 5th, a night called Krampusnacht, elegantly dressed St. Nicholases pair up with monstrously outfitted Krampuses and make the rounds to homes and businesses, offering gifts and playful treats. Some people exchange Krampusnacht greeting cards that depict the horned beast alongside festive and funny messages. Sometimes large groups of people dress up as Krampus and run amok through the streets, chasing friends and passers-by with birch sticks. This activity is especially popular among young men. Tourists who've witnessed this rowdy celebration say that running into a coffee shop won't save you from getting swatted. And the swats aren't exactly gentle. But luckily, they're usually confined to the legs, and the festive atmosphere often makes up for the occasional welt. The tradition has become an important one in many countries and has come to include expensive handmade masks, elaborate costumes, and even parades. Though some complain that the celebration is becoming too commercialized, many aspects of the old festival endure. Krampus masks, for example, are typically carved from wood, and they are the products of significant labor. Artisans often work for months on the costumes, which sometimes end up on display in museums as examples of a living tradition of folk art. In this day and age, it's quite remarkable that ancient traditions have made it thus far, but the legend of Krampus has had an especially rough fight for survival. Austria's ban on Krampus nearly ended the fantastical figure entirely. Though they may have had a point about the traumatic effects of telling misbehaving children that they were going to be beaten by St. Nick's evil twin and possibly dragged to hell, society wasn't deeply moved. The ban lasted for only about 4 years, and vague murmurs of disapproval continued only a little while longer. In the end, no one could keep Krampus down. By the end of the 20th century, Krampus was back in full force, and, in recent years, he's made the leap across the pond to the United States. He's had cameos on many TV shows, including Grimm, Supernatural, and The Colbert Report, to name a few. In 2015, Michael Dougherty and Legendary Pictures created a major film, simply titled Krampus. Its dark wit and talented cast made major box office returns and helped to cement the Yuletide terror figure in North America. Some American cities like Los Angeles host annual Krampus celebrations that feature costume contests, parades, traditional dances, bell ringing, and alpine horn blowing. Cookies, dirndls, and masks are the de rigueur. December 5th is the day this demon is allowed to roam the streets and villages. It was no longer St. Nicholas who would give you a twig or a lump of coal. He was only concerned with the good children. The punishment of the rest fell to Krampus. It was fairly common for the church to integrate ideas and traditions from other cultures into their own when attempting to convert those from a different faith. And it does make sense that just turning up on someone's doorstep and telling them to stop believing in what they do believe in wouldn't go over so well. It's better to show them that there is a common ground in your beliefs, and it's also much more effective. In this case, it was more so the Austrian people who adapted their beliefs into something more palatable to the church. And so the story of St. Nicholas and Krampus is a good example of how a heathen belief was integrated. The tradition of St. Nicholas Day went through quite a major shift. As a result of going from St. Nicholas giving you a twig or coal if you were poorly behaved, to being dragged off to hell by a giant demon goat monster, but of course if you were lucky maybe you'd just be eaten or drowned in a lake, it was quite the tonal shift, and by the 16th century stories of St. Nicholas began to be replaced, and he then became Santa Claus, deriving from his Dutch name, Sinterklaas, or Father Christmas. If you live in the United Kingdom, stories of Krampus remain largely the same, and December 5th is still considered a Krampus night in many countries. With Christmas being celebrated on the 25th, it's only natural to then want to move Krampus night to Christmas Eve for those outside of the Alpine region. And that's why you may see this in various stories and movies, despite these celebrations and festivals taking place in early December. These celebrations can vary depending on the region. They often involve dressing up in fur and attempting to look as terrifying as possible. In some towns, it's more humorous, and in others, it's more scary. But it's all mostly done in good fun. In parts of Austria, twigs will be painted gold and left around the house all year round as a reminder for children to behave. In the 1800s, Krampus could be found on greeting cards, postcards, and on the wrappers of candy. These depictions were rather odd and often quite distasteful, as they feature Krampus with a more devilish figure. This stems from those in large cities never really having seen these traditions, so all they had to go by was the word of the church, who equated Krampus to the devil. In terms of his story, these images do make sense, but it's not hard to imagine why some wouldn't find them suitable. It's also why over the years they've gone from frightening to more comical in order to appeal to a larger audience. What's nice to see is that these festivals still take place today, and not just in towns and cities within Austria and Germany, but all around the world, even popping up in parts of North America. There's no doubt that stories of Krampus and those predating him have a dark tone, but to say that he's just evil doesn't really tell the whole story. Before they were Christianized, the Parktons served as protective spirits, and Krampus only really came to as St. Nicholas's companion, as a way to keep these traditions alive. Even then, he merely punishes those who were deemed as deserving. He doesn't commit acts of evil against the innocent, and therefore, he can be seen as representing a kind of necessary evil. For many, this whole spectacle was and still is a time of fun and expression. Even today, families take their children to these events and festivals, and to them, Krampus is more of a Disney villain than a terrifying demonic story. Obviously, since I host this show, I love the darker side of life, without a doubt. I also love the holiday season. I love it so basically in my being. I really, really do. And I love when they kind of merge together. I love when there are scary holiday stories, scary holiday horror movies. I love everything about being festively fearful. And Krampus is possibly the best example of that out there. So I'm hoping maybe you learned a little bit more about him, because I know I did. And I highly recommend checking out that 2015 film Krampus by Michael Dougherty. He directed Trick or Treat and Godzilla King of the Monsters, so you know it's going to be a good time. And while you're at it, why not check out Don't Open Till Christmas if you want a really freaky, sleazy, bizarre Christmas horror film. But anyway, my friends, all I really hope is that you have a happy, safe, and healthy holiday. Because that's really all any of us can hope for, right? And if you love what we're doing, please go to weeklyspooky.com to find out more about all of it and how you can support us. We really do appreciate it. But for now, I'm going to go out into that snowy nowhere. Terrifying and True is narrated by Henrik Puto, executive produced by Rob Fields, and produced by Dan Wilder. The original theme song is composed and performed by Ray Mattis. All other music is from Audioblocks. A huge thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names on the show. And they are Kelly Oram, Julia Kirsch, Christopher Sullivan, Brent McCullough, Gino Lyons, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, and Kevin Fry. Thank you all so much. And if you want to join them in supporting the program, just go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us keep going and going and going, and you'll get bonus episodes as well. And if you have a story you'd like us to cover, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com.